Donald Trump was elected for a second term in November 2024 with the support of north of 80% of white evangelicals, also a large portion of conservative Catholic Christians. And Donald Trump, in kind, has responded to their unwavering support by continuing to promise special protection and support for Christians in particular. Um, as many have noted, he's been strongly supported by the new apostolic movement of far right charismatic Christians who view Trump as a prophetic figure within their movement. And he's also supported by just a large number of Republicans generally. And so he has responded by continuing to talk about this support he's going to offer to conservative Christians. That support, of course, comes at the cost of their prophetic witness when they support a felon and a adjudicated sexual abuser who has a long history of illegal activity. But what I want to focus on in this video is how Trump is now turning and his administration are turning on attacking Christian individuals and Christian institutions. So, one feature of the Trump administration is his incendiary continual rhetoric against diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, which seek to establish equity within the workplace um, by providing supports for people from various minority groups in order to allow them, when they face some sort of systemic or institutional disadvantage, to overcome those disadvantages and offer their gifts into the wider workplace. DEI is not perfect, of course, but it's also not evil. But for the Trump administration, it is something evil, something to be targeted. And this brings me to this February 17th, 2025 letter that was sent by the Department of Justice, a wing of the Trump administration, to a private law school, the Catholic Georgetown University. Take a look at this. So this was sent up here by Edward Martin from the Department of Justice to the Dean of Georgetown Law School. And take a look at the second paragraph. He says, "It has come to my attention reliably that Georgetown Law School continues to teach and promote DEI," which notably he does not define in this letter. He then says, "This is unacceptable. I have begun an inquiry into this and would welcome your response to the following questions." And then he goes on with his questions. So what we have here is the Department of Justice, the overarching department within Trump's government that enforces law, justice, threatening to investigate a private Catholic institution over diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is how the dean of the law school responded last week. He said, as a Catholic and Jesuit institution, Georgetown University was founded on the principle that serious and sustained discourse among people of different faiths, cultures, and beliefs promotes intellectual, ethical, and spiritual understanding. For us at Georgetown, this principle is a moral and educational imperative. By implication, the principles and values embodied in DEI, whether you like it or not, we have understood to be part of our imperative of what it is to establish a Catholic educational institution. He goes on in the next paragraph and points out the First Amendment guarantees that the government cannot direct what Georgetown and its faculty teach and how to teach it. He goes on, points out that this has been supported by the Supreme Court. And then to read from the top of the paragraph on the next page, he says, "This is a bedrock principle of constitutional law, recognized not only by the courts, but by the administration in which you serve." So essentially, what he's saying here is bring it on. Your threat in this letter is not grounded in law. It's not grounded in the Constitution, but in fact is in violation of it. But what you have here is the Trump administration now threatening independent Catholic law schools, attempting to bully them to abandon the principles that they continue to believe are educational imperatives for the DNA of their academic institution as a faith-based academic institution. This is Trump's before when it comes to the evangelicals and the way he panders to them. that's a way of depotentiating Christian witness, of emasculating Christian witness, um, by giving them all of these promises. Here, what he's doing is he's attempting to threaten Christians, and frankly, this is the start of what we would call persecution, right? A legal threat of inquiry from the Department of Justice. This is the start of persecution on the other side. And this is just one letter. Who knows how many of these letters the Department of Justice has sent out to educational institutions that are Christian based or other faith based or just independent institutions who might likewise have principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of their educational philosophy that they understand to be imperatives for their own DNA. And the government is now violating their own constitution and history of the courts, the interpreting that constitution, to threaten and attempt to bully these institutions into abandoning those very principles. This is the beginning. We're just 6, 7 weeks into this administration, and already they are threatening to persecute Christians.